Hey there and welcome. Gosh, I hope you all survived that storm. We had quite the storm yesterday and a lot of water damage out there today. A lot of people digging out. Well, gosh, we have a really good one for you here today. Let me just share my screen here. Welcome. And let me just switch over here so we have it. Today we're going to talk about resume and taking back control and really what you need to do with your story on your resume today. Because the major problem we have is that no one will read. And, that's gotten worse and worse and worse over the last 2 decades, down to you can send someone a little tiny 2-3 sentence paragraph and they'll miss half of what is actually in there. So today we're going to talk about how we solve that bigger problem all through resume renovation. So let's get started. Resume issues themselves, a lot of times we think, oh, it's just a formatting issue. Well, yes, sometimes the formatting is incredibly important, has to be changed, but the story has to shift as well. And this means a combined paradigm shift with how you'll treat the formatting, but also how you treat the story. So we're going to really look at both halves of that and focus in on that when you think about your background. Now, the other challenge, of course, in the last 15, 16 months, and probably about that much time going forward, is many people are really going to need to showcase the fact that they can work remotely. Let me grab just a little bit of a drink. And maybe we've worked remotely during this time, and maybe we haven't worked remotely. So there may be a fear of, but I haven't worked remotely. Okay. But retelling your career story, retelling your contributions is also about rethinking that interaction and rethinking what you have done. So maybe you have offsite or remote experience, even though you weren't necessarily working remotely, with a vendor or a manager or someone on the team or customers or clients or partners, or maybe you've had the chance to speak and present, and you've done that at conferences or webinars or on conference calls. All of this is a demonstration of you being effective at a distance, part of that entire paradigm shift in storytelling. Well, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, if you haven't seen me before, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. I do believe you should understand everyone's background that's teaching you, so you understand how to value that information. I have 7 or 8 years in outside recruitment. That is a traditional headhunter on the desk that has to go find the superstar from the competitor, lure them out, all of that fun stuff. Then I was the national trainer for a 100 office recruiting system for about 3.5 years and VP over the whole operation before heading out to do what I do for the last 10, 12 years. And that is really working with clients one-on-one, helping them elevate their career brand and story across resume, LinkedIn, really right down even into their interview and the way they outreach for the jobs themselves. And of course, I give talks at the New York Public Library, at the New York State Department of Labor, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, Harvard Business School Club of New York City, many others. That's where my advice comes from. Hands-on at the desk, seeing what people really react to, not what they say they like, but what do they select, what do they choose. A lot of good ideas in my book. I'll let you peruse that on your own. It's on my website, over on Amazon as well. Over on my LinkedIn, you can click on articles to get to a few of these articles that will also really help you through some of the challenges. And if your LinkedIn needs work, you can see the full LinkedIn lecture, both myself and the slides. See me large with the slides large. You can see it all right on my homepage for free, selfrecruiter.com, about halfway down the page. Really using it as a start and stop tutorial while you build out a much better LinkedIn profile. So let's get to Self-Recruiter. Really, Self-Recruiter covers, it's an umbrella that covers all of what I present. It's about how an individual takes control of their career and takes control of their job search, really becoming that one amazing recruiter that only works with one client, which is you. And that means we're going to network in a very different way, which is primarily what we may do on LinkedIn. But it also means that if you're going to be effective, you're going to have to keep one eye on the toughest competitor imaginable. Those 4 or 5 or 6 people that would just scare you out of applying for the job. We'd all like to see the job, go after it, just get the job if it was only that so easy. But you realize everybody's sitting home doing the same thing you're doing. They're hitting that darn button over and over again, which is a rut that we have to get out of. Most times when you hit that button, it is going, in my view, to the wrong person. It's going off to an HR individual whose mission in life is to rule you out. you'll understand that here shortly when I give you a little bit more details. HR folks have a lot of other really great stuff to do, but we tend to cast too much pressure on them in the hiring process. By the way, let's be extra clear. If you would like to be hired to work within the HR department, that is exactly where your decision makers are. I'd be reaching out to them directly. If you'd like to work in another department, well, then the HR department's job is really to just push you to the wayside unless you resist. I recommend you go right to the decision makers so we don't end up in these kind of unhappy places that kind of come out of all that. Whatever has been holding you back, let's get over that and put it up on the shelf. We can go back and visit that misery anytime. Let's think about resume and story and really begin to shift from the usual customer expected more to the unusual, unconventional, unexpected. Your job is to be persuasive. Your job is to teach them how to select you. By the way, that's your job in the interview specifically, but even your resume should be teaching them how to select you. Why does your resume still matter? Well, I'm not in a digital world. I mean, yeah, sure we are, but everyone loves to hold that print of the resume, that physical copy. And even though it may go electronically, PDF on the way over there, it matters because it tends to be the first point of contact, first point of awareness of your value. Oh, get them in here, get them on the phone. I have to speak with them. Sometimes that's LinkedIn, but primarily it tends to still be the resume. So the resume is still involved. It's part of the initial steps of taking control of the discussion and how people think about you. But let's go right to the challenge. I'm sorry, this part is not uplifting. So let's just face some reality here. By the numbers, if you understand the challenge, you're going to change your activity behind the scenes. So that's 1,000 to 2,000 resumes being sent in for any decent job. If this is a decent job you're going after, 1,000 to 2,000 resumes are going in. Very disheartening, right? Except if you're right for this job, that should inspire you because it's not 1,000 to 2,000 qualified individuals, the ones that are right for this job. 95% of these 1,000 to 2,000 are not right for this job. They've seen that job and went, oh, that's a good job. Oh, I bet you, well, they must have a job around that for me. Oh, I'll send my resume in. And then it clogs the entire system until it's non-functional. However, what we're missing is this is just a microscopic, myopic view. Who can read 1,000 emails, 1,000 resumes, 1,000 cover letters, and do all their normal work? I don't know too many people that can do that. But still, that's only a tiny vision of the actual picture. You have to back up much more because a recruiter, whether it's an internal recruiter or an external headhunter, those recruiters tend to be working on 10 open jobs at the same time. That is the role. 10 open jobs at the time is the industry standard. So it's not 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. It's 10,000 emails, 10,000 resumes, 10,000 cover letters. Who can read all of that? Certainly no human being. And that's where that darn applicant tracking system, oh, the machine will spit out my resume. Well, good luck with that. You know, if you're going to pin your financial future, if you're going to pin your career future, you know, on some machine spitting out that opportunity for you, well, my gosh, I think you should probably stop by the bodega on the way home and get one of those lottery tickets. I think it's up over 300 million right now. And you have about the same odds of landing that as you might one of these jobs if we don't take some different courses, different directions. We have mere seconds when there's these tens of thousands of communications going around, seconds to generate the interest, seconds for them to go, oh, get them on the phone, get them in here, whatever it might be. Now, mistakes that we make, and I understand why the mistakes are made, but the mistakes that we make, we want to be perfect. If I'm perfect, I'll just be perfect. But how many people exactly like you that are perfect are standing in that line? To be cookie cutter perfect, and if I perceive you that way, I'm going to pay you less. If I want to hire you, I'm paying you less. No, you don't want less? That's fine. That's fine. It doesn't matter. I'll take the one next to you. I'll take the one over there. All interchangeable. You're getting less money. That's the way it works. You have to somehow not only satisfy that interchangeable, oh, I'm interchangeable perfect, but I'm also somehow exceptional, special. You have to separate yourself out, step out of line from the others somehow, and resume is a great place to do that. Also, don't want to leave you with the wrong expectations. You're not going to sit down after this lecture, spend 2 hours, have your brand new resume. What you might have is your first iteration of your brand new resume. Very likely it's going to take 4, 5, 6 iterations or longer to get to the right resume. The right resume delivers all those interviews that you know you're right for, opens doors to other possibilities. Small changes change everything, but certainly changing perception. So the place to start in reinventing your resume is not with the formatting, but with the story. There's nothing to format without the story, so we have to think about the story. What is your story? Now, most people, we have lived the journey, therefore we don't actually do the work. Oh, I lived the journey. I know the journey. You know the journey from one frame of reference, one point of view on your journey through it. What you need to do is capture all that career story so that you can think about how to assemble it in a much more powerful way. By the way, this is exactly what I do with the clients that hire me. We'll sit down in conversation. We'll have, usually about a 90-minute discussion, very nonlinear, all directions at once, really looking under the bed, in the closet, under the rock, looking for every single piece of career story at every moment in the timeline of the story that somehow got dismissed or put away or hidden away. Oh, not that. It's so old. Oh, it's nothing. Really? That's the sell piece, and you can't see it because you're so emotionally close to it. So sit down, do this deep dive inventory, capture everything. And when I do it, I come up with about 8 or 9 pages of notes in addition to all the other materials I already have on the individual. So you have to interview or interrogate yourself as if you don't know yourself and come up with 8 or 9 pages of real notes so you can consider. Let's be clear. Of course, we're going to have to be capable and qualified. That's a huge piece that we have to convey. But the reason you get hired, there's only 2 of them. The only 2 reasons you ever get hired. Number 1 is chemistry above all other things. This is, of course, if you're capable or qualified. Not going to get hired without being that, but capable or qualified. Chemistry, number 1. Number 2, confidence. Confidence in you above all other things other than chemistry. Chemistry is still ahead. And that's before the credentialing, the background, who you've worked for, what the actual work product was, assuming we're capable and qualified. So my gosh, let's not forget the interesting parts of your story, whether they're work-life story or non-work-life story. Sprinkle in a little bit of why you're interesting. Here's an example. A few years back, I was helping an individual client reinvent their background. And this particular person, she had a wonderful, wonderful marketing background, all this career progression, all of this stuff. I'm like, wow, that's a nice career run to sell. But some earlier iteration of herself, before she started on this track, she'd become a certified locomotive engineer, like choo-choo train, like choo-choo. I'm like, wow. She's like, yeah, that's quite a story. I'm like, yes, it is. And right below her degree, 7-point bold, certified locomotive engineer. And you have no idea how many interviews that delivered because we forgot perspective. Her resume is on the table. It's a dynamite background in marketing, by the way, on the table with 5 or 6 other very, very qualified people. I can't see all these people. Suddenly someone sees her captivating background, go, certified locomotive engineer. Oh, I have to hear that story. Wow, that's nice. A nice background. Put it on the list. I have to hear that. So many interviews by disclosing the proper story elements. So if you've been a 5-time marathon runner and that's not on the resume, that does have to do with your work life because it affects my healthcare costs. It affects your energy you bring to the table, affects my perception of you. Don't forget the why you're interesting and what makes you tick, what drives you, where are your passions. Hopefully some of those are close to your work as well. Now, all these notes are going to really help us create the brand of you. You have to create the brand of how should people think of me? I'm a product. What's the reaction? So every single thing that could separate us out from others becomes part of our brand. So all those notes we filter through that one singular question I'm always talking about, which is, why is it going to be the best business decision that they're going to make today if they choose to hire you? That's the core question. Now, right after I gave this lecture at the New York Public Library, somebody come up and hit me with this resume, almost like that, a little brick in the head right there. And if you've not seen me before, this is a good demonstration of how I always am. I am full of energy. I didn't have time to get my second cup of coffee, so I'm having some water, but usually I'm highly caffeinated. And usually a lot of adrenaline. So this is the end of a lecture. She comes up. You imagine I'm a little buzzing with excitement, and she presents this to me, which is like brick in the head. And I'm like, I'm gonna fall asleep. I better ask a question. I'm like, what would you like to do? Oh, I'd love to work in events. Good energy. Have you ever worked in events? Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I'm me with all of my background holding the resume itself, and I can't even see it. If I can't see it with my background, how do you think anybody in your desired field is going to be able to see it? They took one look at this resume and they saw powerful law firm, powerful law firm. And there's law firms and there's law firms. And wow, that's a law firm. Money. Okay. So they see that and they see a couple other law firms and they go, oh, more law firm for you. I didn't know what you do, but more law firm for you. And that's what this person was getting. This is the same exact story, by the way. This is the same exact background you're looking at right here after I clarified it. All we have to do is remove the nonsense part of the story. We have to remove the water that is diluting your story. And we have to let all the correct things come to the forefront. Also notice here, there is not one piece of sentence structure here. Extra clarity, if I'm reinventing a resume for my client, there is not a single sentence anywhere on the resume. Why would I have a sentence on a resume in a world where people no longer read? There's really no logic to it. You realize here, without sentence structure, all of this fills your head with the actual deliverables I can imagine that this person brings to the table. Of course, her answer was to the, have you ever done events? Oh, yeah, I've done events at the Heller Gallery, at Guggenheim, at Met, at Lincoln Center. I'm like, oh, why don't you tell that story? You'd be hired tomorrow. Level of our events would skyrocket once I saw that background. That's kind of the transformation we're going to have to go through. We've put ourselves in such a tight little box, we don't understand how to get out of it. And by the way, if you need help with your resume, I think you know who to come to. All my services are over under my services tab on the Self Recruiter website. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to chat which package is right for you. We're this product, and whether we like that or not, we have to think about it. And we have to think about how we're going to create engagement from it, which is much closer to this style of engagement, all through small little changes to what we'll do and how we present. Let's get back over to personal branding here and back over to brand itself. All those things, of course, that separate us out from the others. And let's begin to think about this. Now, before I show you what I'd recommend, I wanted to show you a few resumes that I'm going to throw some darts at, not to, do anything negative to these formats, but I just want you to understand some formats you've very likely seen quite frequently and why they either do or don't work. I'm going to bring these center stage here just for a second, full center stage, so you can see them a little bit more while I speak about them. So if we look at this first one here, Kelly, well, kudos to Kelly on the brand. Big, bold, I cannot miss it. Of course, just popped the last name off there because we didn't really need to look at that. And that's the last really positive thing I have to say about this. Maybe I can come into this one a little bit smaller, keep the thing bigger. The last positive thing I have to say about this one. Yes, big, bold on your name is great, except shades of yellow is not really a great choice. Hard to look at. When I print it prints out as shades of gray. That doesn't really work so well. The rest of it here, what this resume suffers from, and your resume may suffer from that, is a complete failure to consider information architecture. A good resume, a good document of any kind requires an architect to control the information flow. Oh my gosh, what if they only read 10%? No, 20% of yours. No, 30% of yours, you're lucky. They're going to read 30% of your resume. Which 10, 20, 30% would you like them to read? Guess who's in charge of that? So here, I don't know whether I start on the left, I'm supposed to look right and relate that, or down the one column, down the other. We lost the story, and you have seconds to go. Not going to work on that one here. Let's just switch to the next one here. Next one here, Julia. Can't miss her brand either, so kudos to Julia on that. Now, I didn't actually write the comments on the bottom of the page. These were pulled right off of Pinterest. Someone was collecting resumes. I'm like, oh, I love resumes too. Let's take a look. So someone said, oh, who said the name had to be at the top anyway? I'll say it. The resume has to be at the top. I'm sorry, your name has to be at the top of the resume. I'm a big believer. Subtitle of my book is Changing the Rules, and yet you cannot change certain rules, and this is one of them. Our expectation is name, employer title, employer title, employer title, education. It's a reverse half moon of an I pattern for every single resume I look at, until I get to Julia. And that creates an information architecture problem. Should I be now reading what's below Julia's name first, then go up and top, or go up and come down? And really, the only thing that's within my eye shot, within my vision range, are the exact reasons I wouldn't hire Julia. Dates are a reason I do not hire you. Dates are never a reason I hire you. So why, yes, dates are expected, but why would we ever put them over by the I pattern? They should be on the other end of the line, as far away as possible. Don't look here, smaller font, not bold. It's barely even on the page, and yet it's there. Also, can't see the employers. Now I know they're a little fuzzed out with some technique there, but I have to go intellectually find the employers somewhere in the middle. The employers determine nearly every ounce of value you bring to the table. Without being able to relate your experience to employers, there's very little brand effect for you. Martin here. Well, kudos to Martin on his brand. It definitely is there. Of course, I've seen this style format for decades and decades in so many books. Problem is decision making. What does it say about decision making? Does it really seem like it makes sense to have 25% of the real estate used just to tell me your contact information? And again, information architecture problem, because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to start down this little blue column and then or read back and forth between the two columns. How's that really supposed to work? And again, if I just back up, all I can actually read here is education, internship, and personal skills, which is just label gimmickry. Label gimmickry is pulling all of the I. There's no story pulling anything. Again, it's a resume that completely falls and fails. We have seconds to capture information. You've got to draw them in and help them visualize your story, not have them react to something gimmicky on your resume. So let's keep all that in mind as we push forward. Now, to clarify a little bit, resume, in my view, is about catching or piquing interest, creating that awareness, that excitement, maybe making them jump out of the chair, literally. Polar opposite of that is really a much more deeper, expanded telling and selling of your story over on the LinkedIn side to help present you as really the very, very best. All this together is about really influencing folks. So let's go back to this first brick in the head that I showed you here. And I want you to think about, how this gets transformed. And your job really here is to figure out how we go about adding some clarity. Is there a way we add some clarity to those just giant blocks of text that really don't say anything? Without clarity, we can't really influence. And we're looking for clarity of our career path, clarity of our story, and we're trying to influence them on the value that we've built and everything that creates this wonderful product that we've become today that they're going to want to hire. So again, let's go back and look at all the clarity here and think about everything that comes to light, everything that the person might want to hire helps create the engagement or of course, a lot closer to that engagement. That's what we have to accomplish. Now you know enough of the challenges. Let's jump into the actual advice piece. Here are 5 key areas you're going to have to work on really to create a winning resume. I'm going to come back to each one of them, so don't be shy about this going fast. You are a product 2, resume, the new definition, your resume's goals, coming right back to everyone, understanding stacks of resumes, and the 3-second test. You are a product 2. When a company chooses to hire you, I can come back a little larger now. When a company chooses to hire you, they're really buying a product, at least buying your time and talents. We get that part. So we have to think about how we're going to elevate our product as the most desirable product. Resume, the new definition. I know you're going to need probably a lot of ink to write this one down. So let's see if you're ready. A simple sales sheet to create desire. Think about walking into a Best Buy or some sort of store like that. They have lots of all sorts of interesting little things that I might need to look at, or I might need to have that type thing. But they make some very large things in the back. Some are 71, 81 inches, 115 inches, those super large televisions. Unless you're single, that is not an individual decision if you like your life. So they make something called a sales sheet or a tear sheet that sits right next to those really beautiful, big, expensive televisions. And it's like it's a glossy little pad, glue on the one end. It feels so satisfying to zip that sheet away from the glue. And now I have this glossy sales sheet to take home with every single reason why I should buy this product. It's not the manual. It doesn't have everything about it, just the sell pieces. That's what your resume has to become. It has to become a sales tool. So the person you send it to can walk it down the hall and effectively sell to somebody else, even if they're not very good at selling it. Now, your resume's goals. Now, let's clarify. It has a mission, which is to deliver the interview. By the way, if your resume is delivering the interviews that you want, very likely probably don't need to change very much. If it is not delivering the interviews that you want, there's something wrong with your resume. Let's shake it up a little bit. The goals themselves, it's a clear, clean, straightforward format. This is a format where the information literally jumps off the page for the reader. Nobody wants to read. Specific things that you think are of most interest to that decision maker are highlighted so they really can be absorbed. Think about that, absorbed. Of course, we have to inform about educational background in that too. Understanding stacks of resumes. Well, what happens if I hit that darn button? Now, let's be clear. If you're one of my clients, I really prefer my clients do not apply online. I really would like them to go right to the decision maker. That being said, I know that it's going to be a mix. Some will still apply online. Some will get some bravery to go to the decision maker. Some will do both. What happens if we do apply online? Well, you're going to click that button. Your resume is going to go off toward a gigantic black hole in space called the data warehouse. When it reaches the data warehouse, kiss that resume goodbye. Not very statistically likely to see that one again. But it's going to stop in front of a person on the way to the data warehouse. And that's where your chance is. So they're going to sort you into one of three stacks from a very brief look. There might be somebody in here. Oh, looks good, looks good. Oh, maybe. Not quite sure. Have to come back and take another look, stack two. But they don't come back. They don't come back and take another look. You know why? Because they have this incoming river of new resumes. Why would I go back to these folks that couldn't quite convey their value to me the first time when I have all new exciting people to look at? And of course, the third stack is a thanks, but no thanks. I'm not even sure why you sent this resume in. Piece you're not probably quite aware of yet. The secret you may not like is how long of a process. It's 3 to 5 seconds. You are never getting longer than 5 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Boom, you're in one of those stacks from employer title, education, my thoughts, right or wrong. That's the way it works. That's a lot of rolling of the dice. So I want you to think about everything that you do to improve your resume has to be with the goal of making your resume get into stack one. Now, one-page resume, unless it's two, but I hope you see that I'm not happy. There's really no time I will tell a client it's okay to have a 2-page resume. If we desperately need a 2-page resume, we have a confidence problem. Anybody's background, no matter how extensive nor impressive it could be, will fit on a single sheet of paper, or we don't know how to edit. If you edit your story down to a single sheet of paper, it is so powerful, you get the interview they cannot pass on speaking to this person. We have to find that balance and find that spot. So what are we looking at on this single page resume? Name, which is your brand, your current or last 3 employers and titles, and your educational background. Now, right after I'd give this talk in person, I'd have people go, oh, John said just put the last 3 employers and titles. I did. When did I say that? I've never said that. If you ask me what I would like, I'm so glad you asked me. I would like a resume to be complete from the time you enter the workforce to today. Were you listening? I said that's what I'd like. I didn't say there was the right solution for you. What we're looking at is the current or last 3 employers and titles for time relevance of skill. It doesn't mean we don't want to see the others. Let's understand that perspective and the difference there. 3-second test for resumes. Go ahead and pull your resume out. This is just for you, nothing to be shy about. Don't look at it yet. When I tell you, you're going to look at it, but you'll have to look at it with fresh eyes. I know this is you and that was your journey. Look at this person as if it's a person you don't know. In the time when I say start and when I say stop, just answer to yourself, what can you tell about this person's value? Go ahead and take a look. And stop. And for those that didn't have the resume handy, you saw me do it. That was 1001 all the way to 1005. It will never be longer than that, and you're in one of those stacks. Most people look up from that exercise and they go, oh, I can't tell you anything about this person, and it's me. That resume has to change. I object to objectives all of the time. Absolutely. Objective statements, all that stuff at the top, profiles, laundry list of everything we've ever accomplished since kindergarten, core competencies. We don't read a word of it. We shield our eyes. We look at the name. Oh, no, don't look there. Employer title, employer title, employer title, education. Boom, decision. So how do we change this effect? Well, first off, get rid of sentence structure so people can't not read it. They simply, their eyes see it and it's in the brain. So let's throw out all this stuff we might have put at the top of the resume and change the use of that space to something I call a positioning title, which is always the job you're applying for. Whether you've ever held that job before or not, doesn't matter. You're presenting yourself as qualified. If you've not held the title, it's really clear because down the resume, they won't see the title, and yet it's right there at the top. So don't get lost. You have to be confident. And if you think you're qualified, it is right at the top. So something like this was that brick in the head resume. That doesn't really work very much. How far do I get? High energy detail. Lost all my energy on that high energy piece. High energy events planner, specialist. Well, I can't miss what this person is now. All that extra baggage did not need to exist. These are different individuals now. This one's a campaign director, media and public relations, community liaison, accomplished sales professional, experienced extensive contacts across industries. Oh, software hardware service, just what I'm looking for. I have a story behind that one coming up. I'll give you a little bit of a detail. Or we can go back to this kind of format that really doesn't work. Even when you zoom in, it really doesn't work. You notice that story elements were here, and yet we use some really terrible, bad words. Coordinating, duties. You know what duties and responsibility are? Like duty. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. What you have to do is shift over to contribution discussion. So we're not maintaining or coordinating or sounds like low level stuff. And we also have to have consistency. So you can't use a dash some places and the word to other places. All things that really remove the power. This has all of the same story elements in it, and yet all of the pieces that killed the story are now gone. So again, think about your resume, think about the challenge, and just watch this for a second as it oscillates back and forth between clarity and nonsense story. The way we used to tell it that is not effective because no one will read the same exact story with clarity that they can't resist reading. Something they tune out on, or back to the clarity they can't resist. This is why you have to go through 4, 5, or 6 iterations to achieve this point. Small changes change a lot of effect. Now, that same brick in the head resume, this was a person who was mature in their career. And, as you get mature, you get afraid and you tend to take out those scissors. Oh, I have to cut off some background. I have to make things disappear. And in doing so, this person cut off Martha Stewart Living off their resume. You want to work in events and you cut off Martha Stewart Living off your resume, and House Beautiful magazine where you did an event at the Guggenheim, and European Travel Life magazine where you did event-related things. Yes, we may want to truncate or shorten our story a bit on occasion, but let's not cut off the sell pieces, because you're going to have to either walk through that door or show up on a Zoom call or something, and they're going to see you no matter what. So let's not cut off too much that hurts us. Now, I told you there was a whole story behind this resume. The guy calls me up from the Carolinas, says, I think I need some help. I had a great run here. I moved into contract furniture sales, like 1,000 desks at a time type thing. Great run, great run. I'm so done selling furniture. But, every time I send out my resume, they go, but we don't need a furniture salesperson. Why are you talking about furniture? Let's take a look at the new resume here. First off, now, Price Modern, you may know them as a brand. I did not. Corporate office furnishings, there's the only place it exists. Hayworth, same line, I knew them as a brand. Other than those 3 reference points, there's not a single other word here about furniture. Why are we talking about furniture? Talk about sales. Achieved $50 million cumulative sales to date, ranked top 10 revenues every year since 2002, developed a strong pipeline. This is every single reason to make the hiring person jump out of their seat. And then, of course, we change the top of the resume to represent what we want. Accomplished sales, software, hardware, services, just what I'm looking for. Well, those sales weren't in software, hardware, services. Now, when I had this discussion with this individual, I said, well, have you ever done it? He's like, oh, yeah, about 15 years ago. I said, wow, that's a great field. Never should have left that field. He's like, I know. It's like, how do I get back? I'm like, well, since this was a 10, 12-year background at the time that I'd worked with this person, their original resume, all the furniture story was the entire resume. Like, no wonder no one wants to hire you. All they see is furniture. Quit talking about furniture, then condense it to only your sales items, a super paragraph. It's a dozen years. He needs a super paragraph. But that allowed us to expand the earlier contributions where suddenly we could see software, hardware, services on the same resume. And of course, no surprise, this person works in software, hardware, services now. This is from a different resume, sometimes going to that point where we may want to cut some of the background. So there's a whole resume above this, but the things I want to teach you here on the bottom here. So in this person's case, we decided to either start or stop their story in 1999, depending on how the way we look at storytelling. So the first employer we're really going to talk about is EDS, Electronic Data Systems. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they are one of those employers. You know, every industry has one of those employers. Oh, they hired you? You must walk on water. Ooh. Okay, well, I'm sure some of these places hire some stinkers, but the perception is they must be darn good. Now, there were 3 prior employers. Actually, there were more, but there's 3 prior employers here listed. And 2 of those 3 prior employers also rise to that absolutely stunning level that's unbelievable. Kaiser Permanente and PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, same perception that you must be amazing. There are 3 crown jewels within eyeshot of one another. And yet, look at the technique. Those 3 employers, by the way, add 17 years of extra background to this person. Anybody need to be 17 years older next time you walk in for that interview? No, I don't think so. Not too many. Few of us, not too many. So cleverly, all we did here was drop the dates in detail. We don't need all of the detail of contribution there. We can drop the dates. And even though intellectually we know that this goes on before 1999, that doesn't matter. That's not how the brain works. The brain sees 1999, resume starts in 1999, even though we know it's not intellectually true. Other thing to teach you here is the educational part at the bottom. I'm a big believer that we should split the bottom of the resume. Only way you can do a single page resume effectively. Notice there are 3 universities, and yet only 2 of them are treated the same. The 2 universities on the left are degrees. They are treated exactly like employer title up above. The one on the right is not a degree. Excuse this word, but that does not trump the degrees. I understand if this is your field, you're probably jumping out of your chair because you're seeing that PMP over there at the University of Maryland go, PMP. That's it. In fact, tattoo it on my forehead, put it up by my name. No. I do understand how valuable that PMP, and that is the sell piece, but it has to be treated appropriately, subservient to the degrees, especially the advanced degree, but it's subservient to that stuff. And I also understand how people absorb information left to right, top to bottom in the Western world. And I know one of the last things they're going to see is the cherry on top of this entire delicious dessert, which is that PMP. Wow, there's a 4th dazzler right there with the PMP. Community involvement, absolutely. I want them to know that I contributed all this in my work life and I still had time to go do something else to better humanity. You'll get the character issue. You'll get the character checkmark. If someone else doesn't have that, but you're all equal, you're suddenly ahead of them. Small little things make a big difference. Put the modesty and humility aside. I know we're not supposed to take credit for that until later or after, but my gosh, we need the credit for that now. So find a way to put our modesty, humility aside, and let's get it on the resume. So we've gone through things pretty clearly now on how everything has to shift from a story standpoint. Let's give you some breakdown on the format that will work for you. Full disclosure, Betty Jo is my cousin. Figured you didn't need all her contact information. I pulled all that off. Now, top is always the target job. Professional experience, I always like to have a nice label where there's professional experience, education, skills, community involvement. Labels like that are typically 7-point bold, all cap. You may go 7 points, so tiny. It's all cap. They'll be able to see it. Now, if it's black, which it will be by default, it still pulls too much eye focus. So you'll notice all labels on the ones that you see here are also hit with a little bit of gray. That means I can see them, and yet they fall into the background, and the content comes forward in the viewer's mind. About 8 points of space, not about, there are exactly 8 points of space right after that professional experience label there. We'll show you in some screens coming up how you add spacing. For now, I would write the spacing down. It is not listed anywhere in any of my writings. Write it down. Or you can rewatch this video. Now, normally we do employer titles. So you look at the 3 employers here, and those are all 10-point bold. I hope you've also noticed the rest of the line is not bold, and it's certainly not 10-point. The comma, location, and date for each line in this iteration are 7-point unbold. Oh, they're there, but don't look here. That's not the story. Let the brand resonate. That is the story. Let's go to traditional ones like Salvation Army, United Way down below. We'll come back to Good Samaritan Village. So, but I do need a drink. If we look at Salvation Army, after we get that in there, we like 2 points of space after Salvation Army before we get to the title. Coming up, how we do that, we'll show you the visuals. Then the title line, that's all of the title lines, are 9.5. That's a half a point less than the brand, 9.5 in size. Not bold, because if you put your title in bold, if I lose my clicker, oh, we seem to have X'd out of my screen on that drop. Let's see if we can get back into it. Oh, there we go. If we basically put that stuff in there as bold, then they're both fighting. They're both fighting for attention. They need to work in harmony. Title still needs to pull focus, so it's in italics at 9.5, ever so slightly smaller than the brand. They work in harmony as a unit. Notice the indentation serves up the employer title up on a silver platter for them. Take away the work for the reader. It'll go much, much better for you. Now, after the title, before the bullets, I like 4 points of space. We're still going to show you how to do that coming up. Bullet points, and then we're going to go back up and talk about the extra special line at Good Samaritan Village. Bullet points, we like 8.5 in size, and you can just, highlight each full bullet set at once. Make it 8.5, and you know what? It's going to get a little tight, a little hard to read. While it's highlighted, we're going to fix the spacing, and we're going to add 1.75 points of space after every bullet. Screens are still coming up to show you exactly how to do that in the software. And let's go back up to this one special line, this nation's largest non-for-profit long-term care organization. I spent 13 years in Florida before I escaped, and every second or third mobile home or trailer park in Florida ends in the word village. I cannot possibly have someone make the mistake of thinking, oh, amazing career. Gosh, your career went right into the toilet. What happened to you? No, this is another amazing employer, nation's largest non-for-profit. If we need to define the employer, if the person next to us has never heard of them, this is how you do it. It's 2 points of space after the brand, the special defining line, the nation's largest, whatever that is, that's 8 point in size. And again, there's 2 points right before that title. The screens of how to do that coming right up. Before we show you the spacing of how to make that spacing happen, I do want to point out what I recommend for your contact line at the top of the resume. First off, do not stack it up like a layer cake, eating up valuable real estate, single line across the whole thing. LinkedIn URL starts off the process, followed by your city, state. I don't hire because you live at 123 any street. That part can go away. Your email address and the cell phone number. The 2 easiest things to get to are the easiest things you want them to act on. Either pick up the phone and call me because you're so sold, or click on my LinkedIn if you're 99% sold, not quite there. Let's close the deal. So that's the top. That single contact line, by the way, is 7 point. 7 point? Yes, 7 point. These are not for you. You're misunderstanding legibility, readability. It'll all be completely readable if you follow my spacing. Now, when you make a 7 point, it's going to go like this and be unreadable. It's highlighted, and we're going to expand the character spacing between those things to spread it out. 1, 2, 3 points until it spreads out, and even at 7 point, suddenly I can read it. Now, how do we add the space itself? If we're talking about adding space after every line, then we go into our version of Word. Now, this is my version of Word. I know Microsoft makes like 20 different versions that all look different. You're going to have to absorb the concept and find this function on your version of Word. And maybe hopefully someday they'll actually make a unified version that works as it should. But I'm going to, on my version, go up under Format, down to Paragraph. A little box will pop up, and there's a section that says Points After. In that box, I'm going to put my 8 points, or 2 points, or 4 points, or 1.75 points. And suddenly, magically, I have that little tiny bit of breathing room after each one of those lines. Now, if we're talking about the contact line, where I have to add spacing or reduce spacing if it was too much, I simply go up under Format, down to Font. And in that box, I click the Advanced tab, and then I'll have a chance to either expand or condense the character spacing. And that's also, by the way, if you ever have a bullet point that's just a hair too long for its line, you can just condense that until it goes back to a single line bullet. 1, 2, 3, 5 iterations really to get to the right resume. Don't think you're just going to have one run through with 2 hours and have the new resume. That's the first iteration. Every time you're going to put it against the original, what works, what doesn't, what did I miss, pick it up and do the 3-second test, back to the drawing board until you get to the very, very best one. Your work pedigree. That's an interesting way to say that. I think of horses and dog food. Okay, I think we have the right thing. You may be getting the 3 to 5 second look at the resume, but I think you're missing how we value it. We're looking at the quality of those companies, right or wrong, by the way. We're looking at the titles or accomplishments, even though we said we wouldn't read your accomplishments, and of course, educational background. Let's give you an example. This is Todd Smith, Nestle USA Director of Quality Assurance, Kraft Foods Quality Assurance Manager, and before that, Coca-Cola Company Quality Assurance Engineer. University of Florida, BS in Agriculture. If this is the resume, I guarantee you it's the world's simplest resume. And yet you all have some sort of a value feel. You have things you can tell here. What can I tell here from this short telling? Well, I see great career progression. I see engineer to manager to director. Oh, I see the degree. That's usually a pretty good thing. And then, oh my gosh, these are stunning employers, aren't they? How do you know? Now, I never worked food and beverage. I worked a lot of other industries, but almost every company I've worked with is completely messed up beyond belief inside. A long-term client who's actually a friend of mine has worked for Nokia Siemens Networks, Liberty Media, Level 3 Communications, Genuity, which before that was a combined different company, Cisco Systems. I can tell you every single one of those companies I just mentioned completely messed up beyond belief internally. Meat grinders spitting out the people in parts. Are these any different? Maybe, I don't know. Are they likely different? Probably not. And yet the value is right there. Let's promote you up to manager. You have to make the decision. You have one interview spot left. You have this Todd person, and someone else just like Todd, same engineer to manager to director, same University of Florida, BS in Agriculture, but they did it for 3 food and beverage companies you've never heard of. Let's see, who gets that last interview spot? Todd or the other one? There's no question here. Every single time Todd will get this interview. That's the value of the brand. So value everywhere and nowhere to be seen. Where you're going to lose your value is what you put under those employers and titles. You saw one with nothing under there and felt value. So you have to have a discussion with yourself, a negotiation with yourself about what is resume worthy. Your achievements have to be bullet pointed. They have to be absorbed. They have to have tangible deliverables. Hopefully, as many of these things involved as possible. Otherwise, you're going to have to use very visual language like redeveloped office workflow. I can imagine it, even though there's no numbers involved. When we can get numbers involved, short, simple, sweet. Let's keep it right there. Degrees of degrees. Have you received in hand your college degree? That's a very bizarre way to ask. I learned I had to ask it that way as a recruiter because I eventually figured out that people were lying to me. Do you know what 3 credits shy of a degree is? No degree. You know what? I forgot to pay that $176 I still owe the university. You know what that is? No degree. You know what matters? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. by the way, if you did not somehow complete or finish the degree, you put in the institution, put in the university or the college or whatever it is, put in your coursework toward a field of study, but not a coursework toward a field of study in a BS and whatever. That's too close to baloney. You cannot use any kind of a 3-card Monte misrepresentation on your education. It has to be clear. If you didn't receive it, then you put coursework toward business management or whatever the field of study was, and don't forget your other things. I was reinventing a client's background a few years back, and this was one of their issues well into their career. So this was a much earlier issue for them, and yet that baggage, like a chip on our shoulder, stays right there. And I'm getting ready for their reinvention, doing my prep work, and I'm looking at the resume, and well, looks like they didn't quite get their degree. And then I'm suddenly looking on LinkedIn going, looks like you've got the degree. Well, we're going to have to clarify that. And so when we got to our interview discussion, I said, well, let's start with education. And it was like, I'm like, take another breath, because I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you. Just tell me the story. Well, it was a rough time in my life, blah, blah, blah. And you know, I was there on all expense Army scholarship. Well, I won the Navy scholarship too, but you know, you can only accept one. I'm like, whoa. You're a dual scholarship winner and none of that's anywhere? Well, because there's that chip on the shoulder about not finishing. They'd also achieved, and I'll get this part wrong because I'm not a military guy, but they also achieved wing cadet commander of whatever. Oh, very patriotic. That sells. Where's all this story? In all of the redone presentation, they're like, oh, I love it. Ready to go stick it on the lamppost. I'm like, but you still don't have the degree. You have to control the story and just be truthful. Also remember, if we're talking about a historical degree we didn't get and we're well into our field, there's only one reason they bring that up, and that is to push your salary expectations downward in the negotiation process. Simply a trick. Don't fall for it. If someone tries to go, oh, John, you didn't finish your degree, which might have been very evident had they looked at the resume. And in that case, they're looking to try to trick you into being in confessional mode. Hope you tune into my interview intervention lecture. A lot of secrets there. But in that case, I have to come back with an agree but disagree. I didn't. It can't sound like there's any baggage or regret. But what it did allow me to do was enter the workforce a little bit ahead of most of those that I was competing against. And that's how I landed that first initial role with such and such, which has been so valuable for my career. End of story, and I wait for them to respond. They just want to know, is there any damage or baggage, and can I use this to maybe offer you less money? Don't fall into that nonsense. Designing your resume. Well, what I mean here is the job is to move your brand forward. How are you going to move your brand forward? This is helping them visualize, adding focus, seeing your career path, of course, informed by educational background as well. Word about word. Not a lover of Microsoft. By the way, I would love Microsoft if they were great software, but they write some of the worst software on the planet. And Word is a great demonstration of that. In all of these years, they've spent all of their effort trying to figure out how to nickel and dime everybody into subscription, which is completely ridiculous for a text editor. And they've never actually bothered to fix the problems, which get worse and worse and worse. So if you were foolish enough ever to follow the instructions in some of those ads, must send Word document. Are you kidding me? Word document is not leaving my cold, dead fingers. Or maybe that's the only time it'll leave my cold, dead fingers. You know what? They're not ever going to get a Word document because you have no idea what the Word document looks like on the other end. It could look very similar, could look like a completely different animal. I experienced that when I was doing a TV production. Some producers came after me and said, hey, we have this idea for this reinvention show. We'd like to do a pilot. Are you up for it? I'm like, oh yeah, love it. Why not? Absolutely, let's see it. And they sent me this guy's resume, and normal, terrible resume, page and a half. Without speaking to them, I redid what I saw into a much better format. And then when it came time to film my segment, because it was a whole makeover show, not just the work piece, I go over after my morning lecture. I meet them at the guy's apartment where they had been filming. And my part was going to be filmed up in a Queens warehouse. And I pull out the resume, the original resume. Can't be surprised twice. I have to save the new one for camera. And suddenly the guy's freaking out going, oh, what happened to my resume? I'm like, this is the original resume. What are you talking about? And ran off to the other room to get his resume, which was on a single sheet of paper. It was fully a page and a half on my version because it opened by my preferences file, not his. When you are all done, and there's a Headless Horseman video that will walk you through this on my YouTube channel, just convert it over to a PDF. And no matter what they say, you only send the PDF. There's no concern here because I also, as the national trainer and the VP, I evaluated all of those applicant tracking systems, and every single one of them took a PDF years and years and years ago. There's no purpose in sending the Word document. Never let it out of your fingertips, ever. Wherever you are in your reinvention process, I hope you sure take your first step and learn how to repeat and get this engine moving. Bonus content for today, we're going to give you a little bit of insight into cover letter. Cover letter is really required. If you don't send a cover letter, I wouldn't even bother to look at your resume. I am not looking to hire anybody that doesn't want this job. If there's no cover letter, you don't want this job, you'd like some job. Be your authentic self. Show a little brand vision. There's a whole article on my website. Just click on the advice tab and you'll get to some of the resume samples, but you'll see this article here, Knock Knock, How to Write a Cover Letter That Opens Doors. It'll take you through the entire structure and the logic and really the emotional sell of a cover letter and how it works. You're talking to a dear old friend that you have to get to fall in love with your skill set and everything you bring to the table. That also means that cover letter is a dating letter because job search is like a dating process. And that means it has to be about them, your excitement about them before it's ever about you. By the way, your excitement about them cannot be because you saw some open job. That is about you. Let's think about it. Oh, I want to go on a date with you because I saw you didn't have a date. You want to go on a date with me because you saw I was dateless? That's your motivation? That's what you just said. So let's make sure we understand it. Be bold, be confident, be yourself. Being yourself, I'm actually shy and introverted. This is myself too. So you're going to have to give yourself permission to unleash a little bit of more powerful you. Don't be submissive, even if it's our style. Your job is to build chemistry and confidence, be valuable, overcome the objections, and get that meeting. A few other things that'll help you. Opening and closing paragraph are really very similar to the opening and closing arguments in front of the jury if you've watched much legal television. Same rules of evidence don't apply in the opening and closing statements in front of the jury. They can make the emotional pitch. Same for the cover letter. Then 2-3 paragraphs that kind of connect the dots in the way that they'd like to hear. That's the dating aspect. Closing directly for a meeting and really setting a line that sets expectations. Something like, looking forward to a great discussion. I think this guy thinks he's going to meet with me. Yes. Why would you not meet with me? Otherwise, we're a little bit crazy. Now, I have one other exciting lecture coming up next week. I am actually out next week for a little vacation right at the start of the month. But I will be back next Friday at September 10th at 11 a.m. And this will be live streamed on my LinkedIn, my YouTube, my Facebook. So you can go any of those places, no sign up required. And that's a special Ask Self Recruiter. That's a new series that I just started last week. That is a live Q&A short form series, usually somewhere in the 20 to 25 minutes. And you can either send in your questions in advance to ask@selfrecruiter.com. That's just ask@selfrecruiter.com. If you have any questions, best questions will be featured live right on the show. Also, if you happen to have access to one of the chat functions at one of the destinations, that should flow back into where I'm presenting. And if it's a compelling question, we'll work that in live as well. Thank you guys for joining in. I really do appreciate it. And we will see you hopefully next Friday at 11 a.m. Take care.